Hi, my name is Pastor Jean,
I'm Pastor Fred.
and together we are
We are
walking with Jesus.
we're walking with Jesus. I thought we were our powers unite, all that stuff. That's what I was thinking. But okay, yes, we're walking.
There's a very small subsection of people that will actually understand what just happened.
That's right. Yes.
So a long time ago, it feels like a long time ago, but as we started this series, we were wanting to highlight what those two disciples, when Jesus was resurrected and showed up in a clandestine way to two disciples, we don't know their names, didn't realize who he was. And he started talking to them about the Word of God and their interaction on a daily basis, historically, presently. And they were like, when they finally realized that it was Jesus, they were like, well, we're in our hearts on fire while we were walking with Jesus.
Yeah.
So we established from the get-go that we live in a world that was created by God. That world faced some problems because God created a system where we needed to have freedom of choice. And that freedom of choice was, well, we just used it and we used it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where we need rescue, and then we've received it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But then we got to ask ourselves, why do we need the rescue?
That's a good question.
Okay. So I don't know. I guess being with Jesus or walking with Jesus does give that conviction to people. Like right away, people are like, oh, okay, I do need Jesus.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But verbalizing it or putting it together in words sometimes gets a little difficult for some people. Okay. So we got to ask ourselves, how much do we need Jesus?
Right.
Before we fell, apparently, mentally and physically, we were a little different.
Yeah.
You agree?
I do. It's
Okay.
enough. Yeah. It's nothing like we are now, but yes, we were different. We were perfect. Yeah.
Sometimes that's hard for me to fit into my head. Like perfect. What does that even mean? Perfect. I'm so far away from perfect.
Right.
But I like to think about it from the concept of like synchronicity with God. That's a big word. Synchronized. Even in our own personal relationships, there are times where we're not in sync. We're not communicating, where we might be at odds with each other. I'm surprised. Oh no. Is that okay? Too much of a reveal?
I don't know. Too much reveal, I think.
But how do you fall out of sync with somebody?
Yeah. I think what you said in the same sentence, communication's a big part of it. I think spending time acting with one another in harmony, like you said, synchronization, that in harmony with respecting each other's boundaries, the laws that govern a relationship and things like that. I'm thinking human, but think heaven and earth.
It's just, I can't remember a time where all of my thoughts were pure. All of my thoughts were great. My goals were God's goals. I'm trying to remember a time in my life where I woke up in the morning and be like, today I'm going to be holy.
Right. Yeah.
Well, no, I do think that, but I don't know if it becomes ingrained into what I'm going to do minute by minute.
Oh, that's good. That's a good distinction. Yeah. Yeah. We want that out here, but
yeah, sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes we wake up angry.
Right.
Sometimes we wake up upset.
Feelings.
Yeah. Lots of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Lots of them.
Yes.
Okay. So what brought us out of sync with God according to the Bible?
Disobedience.
Okay. And with that, sadly, I don't know if God's totally described it, because like you said, communication is important, but when we read the Genesis narrative, there's not a lot of description there.
That's true.
I mean, there's some blessings. Some people call them curses or conditions or consequences. That's all he gives us. But he does tell us our bodies would change, or at least, we would experience things attached to things that we didn't normally experience, at least for the guys. For the girls, their bodies would change, and it had to do with procreation. There was a change to animal life, and there was a change to botanical life.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So would we call that decay? Because on the day that you eat of it, you will die. Did they die that day?
They did not. I don't know if their cells started to die, but you're right. It wasn't an absolute heart stopper.
Okay. So what God had put some there originally wasn't really panning out. So all of a sudden we start looking different. That's the physical aspect. Some people even take it further and they talk about something called nature, and that our natures would get changed.
Yeah. Like our appetites, maybe? Could I say that? Is that
okay?
I don't know. Like what we think about, contemplate, desire, our appetites changed, I don't know, something deep down.
Interesting. Because, I mean, people, you all weren't here, but Fred did an amazing job introducing another big concept to kids at our school. And when he talked about what's good, what's not, he talked about the cookie jar. And, that's right.
Yeah.
Cookie jar. So, I mean, did God create us with desires? He sure did.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we're talking about a change of nature, it's the way I look at it, and you can tell me if there's a better way to say it, is just it changed the focus of our desires.
I like that. Yeah.
From beneficial to damaging.
Yeah. I see it kind of like from others oriented, which in turn comes back to us naturally, to self. Nick, give me cookie, me, like cookie. Like that's what.
Okay. So, and Paul famously talks about that in Romans 7. We might hit that a little bit later. There's what we want to do inside of us, and we know we should do. And then we find ourselves in a situation where we can't.
People don't like to
I don't want to do some of these things that are inside my nature.
Yeah.
But man, I can't stop it. And that's the weirdness. One of my first sermons here, I had somebody come up and try to split an apple. Remember?
With their hands. Oh, we should play that. I'm going to see if I can play that clip. That's so good.
But the reality is that we need to look at what we left behind before that nature changed as something attached to sacrifice. What did we sacrifice? We sacrificed wholeness for partialness. I don't know if that's a real word.
I'll take it. We can do that on our podcast. So, yes.
So, and with that sacrifice, we became slaves to stuff.
It's crazy.
So God's telling us, don't participate in the thing that will make you a slave to something for the rest of your life, and maybe even cross-generationally. I just did a week of prayer at another state, and there were some kids that, asking the Bible questions. Why, oh, why? Why would it, if we messed up, would it get passed down from generation to generation?
Oh.
Why is it that if one person messed up, we are all, why did we have to sacrifice that? Which is a good question.
It is. Yeah.
It is a good question. So what do you think about that? We can wax poetic about that. But ever since then, we've become kind of like these slaves. I like the word addict. I don't know if that fits. Which one do you like best? Slaves or addict? Because you were talking about it to the kids.
Yeah.
You were talking about it to the kids earlier today.
Yeah.
So how would you say it?
Well, I would say because Mia she was the cookie monster in that situation where she was like, once we released her and set her free, she was compelled to come back and find new different ways to get cookies, whether it was taking it by force, sneaking around and getting it. So I agree. Addiction is where I would go. She was addicted to cookies.
Okay. All right. I like that too. I'm a fan of addiction. So there's an enemy. There's our nature.
Right.
And the enemy's purpose has always been to corrupt the Creator's original plan for those of us that were created.
Yeah.
Making sure that everyone and everything on earth is systemically left destroyed, or without the big H word, hope.
Man, what a business to run,
Well, and we can spend the rest of the time of the podcast talking about the motivation from the enemy.
Yeah.
It's a different motivation from the human being. Now, there are human beings that have reached that level.
Yeah.
Are like, man, I'm so upset with God.
Right.
Because honestly, that's really the problem.
Yeah.
Right? There's when humanity gets faced with their addiction or their fallen nature or this change, right? Like the first reaction of humanity is like, oh no, I need to go hide.
Yeah. First, yeah.
Naked.
I'm naked.
Right?
Yeah.
Something physical, something mental happened. And when they were faced with it, their first reaction is what?
Is blame. Blame game. Finger point. Yeah.
That's right.
Finger gun.
So, which is a direct appropriation of what the enemy has always been doing, which is to what?
Yeah. Is to blame God.
God's the problem.
God's the problem.
God's the problem. He has, he's been lying to you. He's keeping you from your best life.
Yeah.
And he's also withholding special info, special stuff, special knowledge.
Yeah.
Because even in the question that student asked me, we have that problem, right? Like, why? Well, wait a second. Now, one person and then everybody else, that's not great.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
God, why would you design it that way? Then if you go up the ladder and we're talking about the enemy, right? An enemy has done this. Awesome. Why create the enemy?
Man, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but the common denominator is that we're doing this.
Yeah. There's
Oh, thanks for my life.
Yeah.
Thanks for potential perfection.
Right.
But
Yeah.
right. So the enemy always blames the creator. And then when we adopt that nature, the entire earth, every person from humanity starts doing the same thing, and it's God's fault because he created us. Had we not sinned, we would have had an incredible relationship with God. We would have had an incredible relationship with humanity. And the Bible doesn't help answer this, right? Even 2 Corinthians says what?
Yeah, it says, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge.
Is that reassuring to you?
Well,
it is as long as you're not finger pointing.
Right. Yeah.
If you're finger pointing, that verse is not going to be reassuring.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Right. So if you look at God as a sovereign being, it's like, well, I'm going to entrust you with everything. Despite the fact that I'm messed up, I'm trying to walk with you. So I'm going to have to trust that you know where we're going, that you have the right pace for me. You have, all of those things. So Fred, my question for you, I've been talking way too much. I always do that. So what do you say to somebody who begins going down that path of blaming God for stuff? What is like your initial take, your initial way of dealing with it?
Yeah.
Just you.
Just me.
Yeah.
If we just all made it a business just to blame the one who,
like, if you run into a person,
yeah,
you're trying to introduce them, you're like, hey, let's go walking with Jesus, right? But all of a sudden, it was like, yeah, sounds like a good walk, but
I see,
right? Like, what's your initial reaction? What
they
do
begin
you do?
to blame.
What's your tactic?
Okay, they're blaming God. Well, I think the first thing for me is not to try to defend God. I feel like that's something I try to do. I get offended when people blame him on his behalf for him. Yeah. And then I find myself trying to pull up things to try to protect him because it looks like there's holes. So first I need to know that, I'm walking with Jesus. I need to be walking with Jesus. And then the blamer is like, well, if this didn't, one of the biggest questions is, if God is so merciful, then why did he let my baby cat die? Or why did he let my grandparents die? Or whomever it is. If he was a good God, then why? And so not trying to defend him, but just simply saying, okay, well, maybe there's something that we're not seeing that's going on here. I'd start there because it's easy to blame, it's easy to blame, because that's what we did from the garden from the beginning.
Right. So I like that. I always try to hear the story. For some of you that don't know, I walk around with a stick that's got a bunch of names on it. And to me, the core thing is the story. Because anytime I run into a person, I like to look back at Genesis 3 and see, because before the blame happened, what did they do?
Yeah,
they ran and they
hid.
They hid
is what they did. Yeah.
Right. Because that's what's happening. People are hiding from God. They see God as above. There is a fear attached to it. And people, whenever we are in the weird or the bad version of our nature, there is an allergy to God's holiness. And holiness is very interesting. I just had a Bible study Wednesday, here at the church, where we defined, and some of you may have heard me say this, people can be holy, places can be holy, things can be holy, and time can be holy.
That's good.
And what makes something holy?
Yeah, that's God. That's walking.
The presence of God. So when we fall, or even after the greater fall of humanity, we stop being happy when we were around his holiness.
That's right. Yeah.
He went out looking for us and we were like, kept hiding. Yeah. Only when he was like, hey, show yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Do we do it? But then it's begrudgingly, and then there's excuses and all these other things. All we wanted to do was to hide. So my take is always like, hey, tell me your story. Why are you afraid? Why are you upset? Why are you angry? Why are you like, where does this come from? Get me to the basic story of where this comes from. Any person that says they don't believe in God, don't want to walk with God, chances are enormous that something that was supposed to provide the comfort that God provides, ripped it away from them or betrayed it or misrepresented it.
That's right.
So I want to hear that story, no matter how painful it is, no matter how offensive it might be to me.
Wow. Yeah.
No matter how angry it makes me.
Yeah.
I need to hold that down. I need to ask Jesus to help me hear all of the story, because, and then it's pretty simple from there. It's like, well, let me expose you to who God isn't, because who you're describing,
Oh, I see.
that's not
That's
God.
not God. Yeah.
I mean,
I see.
most people just sleep past how God responds to humanity. He like asks them where they're at. He knows where they're at.
Right.
He asks them, what did they do? He knows what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Just gives a bunch of opportunities for the person to own it,
Yeah.
own their side of it.
Leadership. Yeah, that's good.
So how can we create that opportunity without being braggadocious, condescending,
Yeah.
just, I think it starts with listening,
I think so too. Listening. Step one, listening to the story.
because that is the condition of any person that has not let God into their life. Every time there's a story there as to why God is not the one. God is not the one I need right now. I need answers, and I need explanations, and I need excuses for how I messed up.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair.
A justification.
Yeah.
There
you go. So this whole in sync with God.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you portray it to people, right, that are not happy to hang out with God?
Yeah.
How would you do?
Man, well, I'll tell you. Yeah, that's a good question. We begin that.
Well, just talk about what works for you.
Yeah. Okay.
For you.
Yeah. What works for me, being in sync with God, it starts small for me, because I think when we talk about this stuff, it's on a large scale. We're talking about the cosmos. We're talking about eternity. We're talking about life and death and my loved ones and these things and so really we have to go back to the garden and the simplicity of maybe pulling radishes in the garden. And I mean, just the little things,
I do like radishes.
Do you really?
I do, but they're not a fruit. So original diet was fruits and seeds.
Oh, that's
the vegetables didn't make it until later, sadly.
Yeah. So maybe they were pulling them for the animals.
Sure.
Yeah. The horses. And so and when I say that, we get down to the dirt level, the sand. For me, to answer your question, it would be that I'm talking to God about little things, and I'm growing that, because I don't trust him with the big things yet. The cosmic, why did my so-and-so die? And where do I go when it's over? And the separation of sin and life and death.
Without getting into it, can we give people homework?
If you guys, we have that ability.
We have that ability.
Homework it is.
Go read Revelation 20. It's very important to look at, how the Bible ends, and how there is a fact there that you will get to heaven, and you might not be super happy, and everything might not be super perfect in heaven until a certain amount of time has transpired.
Yeah.
The Bible describes it as 1,000 years to ask questions, to continue the finger pointing, and to get the answers. No more tears, no more suffering, no more bad things doesn't come until all of that is done. Because if we were allowed to go to heaven right now, would we be happy?
Miserable. Absolutely. I mean, in my mind,
there'd be some cool things.
There'd be cool. It'd be cool, but it'd be after a while with some of the habits that I've come up with here, and some of the habits that I participate in, I would be running into walls again. I'd be paranoid. I'd be like, I don't want to mess. This is a perfect place. Yeah. I'm not good enough to be here. I don't belong here, but I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to earn it. I'm going to try to portray it. I'm going to try to,
That's a really interesting question. Would we be happy if we went to heaven right now without being changed, without getting the answers?
Without being changed, without the answers. Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, the answer is no.
Which pairs itself with what we see in the Bible. God shows up unfiltered, without the cheat code, Jesus, right? How do people react?
Yeah, without the cheat codes, Jesus, you said?
Yeah, the unfettered presence of God shows up in the Bible.
They don't even
every time. What's the reaction every time from people?
Yeah, first they don't recognize him, and then they want to kill him. I mean, that's
Jesus. But I'm talking about the glory of God shows up.
Oh, yeah.
People are peeing their
pants. Oh, yeah,
yeah. Hide us.
They have to do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Relax. Calm down.
It's okay.
Breathe.
No, not me. Why? I'm down for 2 weeks. Laying down on the floor, sick, fell on his face. I could keep going.
Right.
It's a long list of things. Okay, so and it goes full circle back around. There's a physical problem with our nature.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual problem with our nature. There's an emotional problem with our nature, right? How many times have you ever interacted with people and then realized, you know what, this person is not emotionally there for me to have a conversation / relationship / working?
I don't find out until like years later. I'm like, but no, it happens.
No, for me, sometimes it's immediate. I'm like, this is going to be tough. This is going to be real tough, right? We're not going to get the best out of this relationship until some sort of solution can happen. And I think with spiritually, you run into a person and you're not in the same vibe spiritually, and you're like, wow, this is not going to work out.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to laugh about the weather, and we're going to talk about super innocuous, superficial things.
It's a good start, though.
It's always good, but sometimes it only stays
there. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Can I work? Like, sometimes you can overcome it to work to accomplish a common goal.
Yeah.
But to actually develop deep, lasting things that you're like, oh, I can take this into eternity. No, you need all three, right? Like, your body's going to decay. Your emotions got to be in the right place, and you got to believe the same things.
Man. Yeah. It seems it's going to take something supernatural is what you're saying.
Right. So when we get to heaven, because right now, the focus of humanity is to do what?
Man, the focus of humanity when we get to heaven is...
Well, no, right now, we're focused on who?
Oh, me. Absolutely. Numero uno. Right. That's it. Yeah.
But when we get to heaven, I don't think that's going to be the focus.
Yeah.
So in heaven, there is a love that doesn't think about itself.
Yeah. Others-oriented love. Yeah. Self-giving.
Right now, either because of self-preservation, because we're afraid, because we're proud, or we're just so greedy.
Or obtuse. Just so focused. Yeah, I guess greedy. That's what that would be.
Or reacting to traumas and anxiety.
Or that,
right? Like, we're really self-focused most of the time. Every time I talk to a person and I tell them, hey, would you like to share? Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, no. And then if I ask the question, why? Long laundry list of things that I have to repeat to them. Yeah. Hey, the only person thinking about those things as much as they're thinking about them is you. People are not thinking about that. Why? Because I have a wonderful guarantee. They are thinking about themselves. So something's going to change. Something is going to change. We're going to go back in sync with God. We're going to be back in the heart of infinite love that has always been flowing in which direction?
Yeah. Outward,
right? And so this would not do the trick for us right now.
That's true.
Because there's something that we have not changed. Now, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you think that change requires exposure, or God needs to snap his fingers and all of a sudden now we can love the right way?
I like what you said.
Or does it need explanation?
Yeah, I like what you're saying, because there's the two extremes, right? There's you use the word Thanos, and then there is the opposite end of that, right? There's the exposure, but it has to be transformation. And how does that even happen? Has to be, what was the word you used? What was it that you had said?
Being in sync.
Yeah.
Being in sync.
Oh, yeah, synchronization.
Right. Because right now it says, because the Bible does say that in the blink of an eye, we will be changed.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's right.
It does say that.
It does.
It does say that. Until that it's almost as if there's the sin species and then there's the obedience species.
And yeah,
it's almost as if we're a different species.
Yeah.
And our species would not be able to survive the gravity, the atmosphere, or whatever exists in heaven.
Yeah, it's like living on the moon or something.
There's no living on the moon.
Right.
Frozen.
Yeah, exactly.
Insta frozen.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think that's maybe the reason why we continue to have this roundabout, right? David was called a man after God's own heart. Fantastic.
Right.
What does that look like? Well, because right now, the way God thinks, the way God feels, the way God looks, to us would be what? The way God thinks, the way God feels, do we think like that? Do we feel like that?
Yeah, not at all.
Okay. So it's foreign.
Yeah.
It's foreign to us.
So to kind of wrap this thing up, we want to, maybe there's two verses, perhaps there are two verses that we can look at that kind of sheds some light on this issue that we have. One of them is in Job there. It says, who can bring what is pure from something that isn't pure? We're starting to see this disparity between God and us. It's this, and everything we try is just constantly falling short.
Right. And God can't help but being pure. Is there another verse? You mentioned 2 verses.
Yeah. Romans 8:7, actually. It says the sinful mind is at war with God. It does not obey God's law. So as much as we try, it's just not going to happen, is what that's saying, which is a bummer.
It is a bummer, but there's good news. God is trying to make something pure from something that is impure. God is trying to change the mind from something sinful to something that wants to obey God's law, wants to be with God, wants to be in sync with God. How does that happen? Right. There are other examples in the Bible. Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's a woman that got close to Jesus. She was impure and couldn't be next to a pure Jesus. And she was like, well, if I just touch a little bit of the pure.
Man.
And so God is looking for that mindset.
Yeah.
That's like, I want to be, it's just a faith situation. So as we're walking with Jesus, know that when we first hear him, we're going to be confused. We might disagree.
This is true.
We might have more questions.
That's right. You have a story.
But if you're really listening, if you're really open, and if you really allow Jesus to share while you're walking with him, your heart, your mind will be touched. You will start to feel like, oh man, this is what I wanted. This is what I've been looking for. This is what I'm looking for. So next week or next episode, we will continue to look at what that looks like to be in sync with what God's mind looks like. Because school, our cultures, our freedom of choice, and all of our hard work, they're all amazing things that we can do, but they'll never accomplish what God can do by directly speaking to us and directly hearing what he's trying to tell us. So on that note, we hope that you join us next time as we continue walking with Jesus. I hope that you were able to glean something important. And if you didn't, we're okay with that. Ask us some questions, send us some messages, and we'd love to continue having the conversation with you.
All right. Well, till next time. Talk to you later.
God bless.